Vice President Yemi Osinbajo advocates judicial reforms, especially in the selection of and appointment of judges.
Federal legislators drum up support for military operations to rid the northwest of bandits.
I'm very confident that this issue of banditry in the northwest is almost now a history.
For just a month, I think the Nigerian army has recorded a lot of successes.
NCDC announces 473 new COVID-19 cases, leaving Nigeria's caseload at more than 46,000.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on how to ensure peaceful governorship election in Edo State.
Ahead of the September 19, 2020 Edo governorship election, the state has been in the eye of the storm with mudslinging, accusations and counter-accusations, violent inclinations and threats characterizing the electioneering process.
Of course, Karen, you recall those were exactly the same reasons that prompted a discussion on mitigating violence before and during and after the Edo election. That was exactly 1 week ago on this program.
Okay, well, that's exactly the reality. But events in the state since that edition of Good Morning Nigeria are telltale signs that anarchy is brewing along with the electioneering process. And if not checkmated by all relevant stakeholders and authorities, there might be dangerous precedents for Nigeria's democracy.
Well, it would also appear that the event in the State House of Assembly in the build-up to the election may reveal a tussle for the very soul of democracy. That is the legislature by the major contending parties in the state, and of course, as some political analysts are insinuating.
And first, the Deputy Speaker, Yekini Idiaye, was impeached. And followed by a siege on the assembly complex in Benin City by security operatives. Another was, of course, a move by some members to form a parallel assembly, and eventually the removal of the roof of the complex, supposedly for rehabilitation at this election period.
Well, Kieran, there is no doubt that the crises and events playing out in Edo State are, precipitated by the overall quest, for who occupies the Edo government house, and that's, of course, after September 19 this year.
And, of course, the umpire, that is the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is already sensing the looming anarchy. And its chairman, Professor Mahood Yakubu, has threatened that INEC will withdraw from the polls and see who will announce the result if the parties resort to violence. I wonder how INEC will withdraw from an election that has been planned for over a year now.
We'll get to see that, but that's not the only threat INEC is making. INEC is also strongly vowing to sanction any political party or individual that violates its rules in the build-up to the governorship elections, whether in Edo or Ondo, which comes up much later. But what steps need to be taken urgently towards achieving a peaceful governorship election in Edo State? That's part of what Kieran is asking, and this is why the prompt for our conversation on Good Morning Nigeria today promises to be quite an exciting topic. I am Claire Adelabo Abdul-Razak. Welcome to the program. It's reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA.
And I am Kieran Umayo. Also, I'd like to welcome you to the program. And we are reaching from the nation's capital city of Abuja. In a moment, we shall be bringing you the morning news and also serve you other segments in the course of the program. Dennis Adegunloye is here for the morning news. Good morning, Dennis.
Good morning, Kieran, and good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has expressed the need for an urgent, honest and frank conversation about judicial reforms, especially the selection and appointment of judges in Nigeria due to the significant roles judges play in the polity, economy, social justice and democracy. Speaking at the Justice Research Institute virtual roundtable themed Selection and Appointment of Judges, Lessons for Nigeria, a statement by Laolu Akonde, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity in the Office of the Vice President, said Professor Yemi Osinbajo noted that the integrity of the judicial system is crucial to everything in the society, hence the need for stakeholders to engage in an honest and frank discussion that examines the challenges and prospects. The Vice President, however, noted that it will be unfair to pick out the judiciary alone for censure for some of the failures in the nation's system of administration of justice, but that the problem can be partly blamed on societal pressure. The second meeting of the Northeast Governors Forum has ended in Maiduguri with a resolve to, among other things, work with the federal government to tackle security challenges bedeviling the region, as well as produce a comprehensive strategic master plan to ensure sustainable development in collaboration with the Northeast Development Commission.
Together to foster regional integration, growth and development, especially in exploitation of its oil and gas potentials, mineral resources, agriculture and industrialization. The forum called on the federal government to revoke selected roads contracts awarded by Federal Ministry of Works for years without progress and re-award them to more competent contractors and firms to ensure timely completion.
President Muhammadu Buhari has nudged cadets of the Direct Short Service Course 29 of the Nigerian Air Force to be resolute in their commitment towards protecting the territorial integrity of Nigeria. This is contained in his message to the passing out cadets in Kaduna.
That you will do your best to further enhance Nigerian Air Force efforts towards boosting quality health care for personnel.
Meanwhile, the National Assembly has acknowledged the efforts of the anti-banditry operations by the military in the northwest region of the country. This is coming on the heels of an oversight visit to the Nigerian Army Super Camp in Faskari, Katsina State by the Senate Committee on Army.
I'm very confident that this issue of banditry in the northwest is almost now a history.
For just a month, I think the Nigerian Army has recorded a lot of successes.
Military operations deserve commendation, deserve applause, and we are mobilizing members of the public to come to the aid of the military by giving them information. They should not shield the criminals.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has confirmed 437 new cases of COVID-19 across 17 states, bringing Nigeria's caseload to 46,577. The breakdown of the 437 new cases reveals that Lagos has 107, the FCT 91, and Plateau 81. Others are Kaduna with 82, Ogun 30, Kwara 24, Ebonyi 19, Ekiti 17, Oyo 8, 6 cases each in Borno and Edo, 4 in Kano, 3 cases each in Nasarawa, Osun and Taraba, 2 in Gombe, and just 1 case recorded this time around in Bauchi. Lagos State now has a total of 15,875 confirmed cases, followed by the FCT with 4,467, while Oyo is third with 2,868 confirmed cases. Out of Nigeria's total of 46,577 COVID-19 cases, 33,186 have recovered and been discharged, while the death toll now stands at 945. The federal government has stressed the need to revive moribund agricultural facilities across the country as a sure way to achieving food security. Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Alhaji Sabo Nanono, made this known during the distribution of agricultural palliatives to farmers in Imo State.
It is a good thing that is happening in Imo State today.
We need that silos to be functional in Okigwe.
I tracked my own back to farm initiative.
We are looking into the future of mechanized agriculture. This is going to by our shared authority establish a a Minister of Agriculture and Environmental Health.
And ahead of the September 19th governorship election in Edo State, the All Progressives Congress is excited by the massive turnout of supporters during the flag-off of the party's governorship campaign train in the state. The APC, in its statement by the Deputy National Secretary, Yekini Nabena, says the Edo electorate has sent a clear message on the governor's direction of the state, a progressive one which puts the people's welfare and interests first. The party particularly thanks the Oba of Benin, Oba Ewaret II, for the warm reception and hospitality His Royal Majesty extended to the party's leaders during the courteous visit to the palace. And of course, there'll be more discussions on the forthcoming Edo governorship elections with Kieran and Claire after this break. Good morning.
Introducing the new and tasty Peak Yogurt. The nourishment to be you, do you, and go for you. Peak Yogurt comes in orange, strawberry, and plain sweetened flavour. All available in nearby stores.
You clean your teeth every morning, but that fresh breath feeling just doesn't last. The answer? Easy. You keep your teeth strong and healthy and give your mouth long-lasting fresh breath with new Oral-B 2-in-1 toothpaste. It helps strengthen your teeth and gives you long-lasting fresh breath.
So fresh, still fresh, and still fresh.
Stay strong, stay fresh. New Oral-B toothpaste for strong teeth and long-lasting fresh breath.
All right, welcome back. If you've just joined in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. It's the first edition for this week, Monday. Thank you for joining us. Coming up next is newspaper review. Don't go away.
All right, and next for us now is a newspaper review. And of course, Bayo Altebi is here with us as always. Bayo, it's good to have you this Monday.
Thank you, good morning.
You're most welcome. I was glued to the newspaper. Yes,
you're already ahead of the review before we started.
Exactly.
Good morning, Claire.
The kind of headlines that we have this morning.
Nigeria.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
And maybe Claire will begin the
All right,
review.
let me start punching off with a punch. And it has a very busy front page this morning. But its lead story is on the Edo Assembly crisis. That's how the caption is cast. Factions exchange words over planned sitting in Short Complex. Factions exchange words over planned sitting in Short Complex. It's on page 2. The riders come in 2. Obaseki cannot stop our proceedings. That's what Shomole-backed legislators. And the other 17 lawmaker session is a town hall meeting, says governor's aide. And Kaduna killings again can protest, asks God to take over battles. And those are the picture stories you see on the front page of the Punch. All right, those are the pictures. Other stories trending down. Man, boy drowned in Kano rivers. Katsina warns civil servants against social media comments. Pastor impregnates 2 siblings during spiritual cleansing. And the other stories trending at the bottom. Mourners defy COVID-19 regulations as Kashamu is buried, page 9. Killers of Nasarawa monarch immigration officer nabbed, page 5. And Northeast governors meet plan to reform Al-Majuri system. It's on page 8. Just a quick one at that, just a bit above the nameplate. 4.36 million oil barrels lost to power outage and others. That's coming from the NNPC. Now, stamp duty account, you lied, NIPOST tells FIRS. Page 19. CBN to unify exchange rates pegs Naira at 379 per dollar. And NDDC writes IG, demands prosecution of failed contractors.
All right, sir. Are you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, okay. Let's go to the Nation newspaper. Above the nameplate of the Nation newspaper, IMC, 11.5 billion naira smuggled into NDDC's budget. Petitions IG over contracts. That's on page 8. Northeast governors seek more arms for police. That's on page 26. And then JAM to shift 2020-2021 admissions date. Call PGF DG to order, says a Senate spokesman. Well, the two stories are on pages 25 and page 8 of the Nation newspaper. Now, below the nameplate, we have other trending stories here. Edo and Ondo 2020, APC voters have decided for Ize Iyamo support Obaseki's re-election to move forward. Ondo deputy governor to run on ZLP's platform. PDP woes Mimiko for Jegede aspirants back Akayodolu. That's the stories are trending on page 7 of the Nation newspaper. Now, fund BDC to stabilize Naira, Sanusi tells CBN. Market leaders demand rate unification framework. That story is also on page 8 of the Nation newspaper. Now, the lead story this morning on the Nation is the EFCC presidency widens Salami panel's mandate. With the two riders, the committee granted judicial powers to hold public sittings. All right, the further story is that of Christians praying against the killings in southern Kaduna. It says Christians pray against southern Kaduna killings. It's on page 25. Abiodu, Tinubu, Ogun Speaker, others bid Senator Kashamu farewell. Those are the very bottom of the Nation. Let's bring in Bayo now.
Well, thank you, Kirian. Let's start with the story about the door that Claire and you read. Before the commencement of the campaign, both the leading political parties, the All Progressive Congress and the People Democratic Party, had reiterated the need for them to have issue-based campaign. Unfortunately, since the campaign started, Daily Sun is reporting that the idea has become one of name-calling and mudslinging, and so much so that the atmosphere in the Edo State is seriously very charged. At the last count, we now have two factions of the legislature now in the Edo State. And the Omolobanedo has been of concern. And he says that the palace is for peaceful campaign. The Edo throne, he says, is not partisan. He said, let the best man win. But the way they are trading now, issues are not being canvassed, insults, personal attack, and mudslinging has become the order of the day. More so, the threat of security, of peace, is becoming seriously heightened. There are insinuations and allegations of mercenaries being imported across the state and attempts at violence. This needs to be knit quickly in the bud. Yeah. The other concern is that of the Northeast. The 6 governors of the Northeast met in what they have created now as Northeast Governors Forum. And they commended the initiative of the federal government, but they are calling that apparent shortage of manpower in the armed forces should be supported by the police, and the police should be provided highly technical armament, including artillery, to be able to support the initiative of the armed forces. But they say that there's need for the war to be taken to the grassroots to enable the citizens go back to their residence and also to go back to farming, which is the mainstay of the economy, because otherwise farming is looming.
Yes, I'm just wondering about the issue of a shortage, of personnel in the armed forces as they raised. How did they come about that? Is that the true position of things with them?
Well, these are chief executive of states, and they get security report, and probably they know what I mean. And if you look at the armed forces is not meant for internal security. They are meant for defending the territorial integrity of the nation. But as a last count, the armed forces is involved in about 36 operations across the country, which are all internal security challenges. And therefore, they are spread thin. And this is why the chief executives are emphasizing that the police should be able to supplement.
But there was a time when the federal government approved the recruitment of some thousands of policemen.
Yes, 10,000 every year since I think 2015.
Yes,
10,000 every year.
Yeah.
This is to supplement the manpower of the police. But what they are asking for is that it is not enough for them to use the current weapons they are having. They should be given better sophisticated weapons so that they could support the armed forces in taking the war to the bandits, to the kidnappers,
but you also know that this is an asymmetrical war.
Yes.
So you really do not have to use, force and weapons all the time. You also need to use some psychological, and developmental, measures, just as, the social welfare, social investment program is doing. I think we need to upscale, the intervention, the humanitarian intervention, so that people would also, be gainfully empowered. And then when they are gainfully empowered, they look nowhere else. They're not attracted to, joining, or because what we hear is that there seems to be divided loyalty in some communities in the Northeast, as a result. So I think that should really be looked into.
One aspect of this is very important. Is yes, you have mentioned that it's not an asymmetrical war. It's an asymmetrical war. That's when you talk about Boko Haram now. But the banditry is totally different. Their operational methodology is totally different, and that there's a possibility that you can take the war to them. Right, bandits now, who often strike, in villages, and cut away their property and all of it, and return to their base. Their operational method is totally different from that of, Boko Haram. But in terms of, the police that you mentioned, it is very important to get the police properly equipped. That's a very important point that you have made there. They have to be properly equipped because when you are involved in an internal disorder, as we have it now, and of course you say about 36 different operations involving the military and the police. The common sense tells you that, look, that the police should be properly equipped with not just modern equipment, but sophisticated ones. Because the people you are fighting, we don't know how they come about the kind of weapons that they use. So by the time you are using a weapon that is less in terms of superiority, then of course you are fighting a lost battle, right? Because the superiority of the equipment you are using determines to what extent you can go in winning a war, globally speaking, right? And then of course Nigeria has Nigerian Air Force, is of course doing something good aerially, which is also very useful. It can help the land force, to gain control, in some of the areas in question. So if that can be intensified, right, in terms of area battle or area fight, against the bandits or even Boko Haram, then of course we'll be making progress.
Talking about the police, the essence of the sophisticated weapon, it cannot be overemphasized. The police most of the time have cock and fire kind of firearms, while the criminals they are chasing have automatic weapons. You remember, there was the bullion van that was traveling from Enugu to Abakaliki, and you had criminals killing 4 policemen, injuring 2. What did they have on them? They had among their armament AK-47, this machine gun, specially propelled machine gun, and they have even some bombs in them. They have 5 days after, the police have arrested the gang that was involved. And guess who are some of the personnel there? There is a soldier who is serving at the Command Secondary School in Lagos. Another soldier, they gave his service number. One dismissed soldier who was serving in Maiduguri was among the group. Then you have other persons, including a citizen who is resident in Kubwa in the Federal Housing Estate here in Kubwa, who is the one sponsoring all these criminal activities. And they have so much sophisticated weapons. They overwhelm the police.
All of this would require, adequate funding. And of course, we know what finances, is like at the moment. And I don't know the stage of the police reform bill now. I don't know the stage where it is at the moment. But I would believe that if that becomes law, it will probably address the funding, sources of the Nigerian police and all that, and probably address the issue of weaponry and all that. So it behoves on the legislator to also help and speed it up if it hasn't been attended to anyway.
Yes, there's a story too about JAMB, Joint Admission Matriculation Board, is meeting today.
Yes, sorry. That story
date.
is on page. It's on the front page of the Punch. It says JAMB versus me today to fix new 2020 admission date. Is that what you?
Yes. No, originally they had fixed, I think, August 20 or so for the admission processing. Now, with exit students going back to school, they are now getting preparation for West African Secondary School Leaving Certificate Examination and NECO. It means, therefore, that examinations that are premier FASI qualification for admission had not been conducted. Therefore, there is a need to push forward the date for admission, and that is what the meeting is. And it will put parents and candidates at least their mind at rest as far as that is concerned. INEC also conducted a by-election over the weekend in Nasarawa State. But the import of that by-election is that INEC has introduced what has been described as a polling unit result, which will be done electronically. This will be on the portal. INEC emphasized that this is not using electronic means to collect election results, but as is required by law to post unit election result at polling unit, that will be done and also will be done electronically. So you can check that on that. And the last was a state election in Nasarawa State, supervised by Malam Haruna Mohammed, and it came out successfully. And the APC candidate, I think, won with 7,475 votes, as opposed to the next, who was close to him, PDP, that scored 4,608 votes. It was for a Nasarawa Central seat in the State House of Assembly.
Well, that's a healthy development. Gradually we begin to apply some level of technology in our elections. And by the time we start small, gradually we expand it and see how it can be done nationally.
There's a clause in the Electoral Act, I think, that stops using electronic means. But as far as the overall results is concerned, it is still manual collation. But this step will be carried out through to Edo elections, Ondo elections, and subsequently.
All right, the editorial for this morning is taken from the Daily Trust newspaper, the unnecessary FIRS NIPOST feud.
Well, it's a feud over internally generated revenue assignment that is given to federal agencies. If you hear stamp duty, the thing that comes readily to your mind is postal stamp, is it? And you think that it is NIPOS that is in charge. But there is a law that has been signed by President Muhammadu Buhari in 2020 that domesticates stamp duty at the doorstep of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. But NIPOS is saying that they have an account at the central bank that is meant for stamp duty post. And therefore, when it comes to adhesive stamp and stamp duty, it is their responsibility. The good thing is that all of them are eager about internally generated revenue, but this seeming rivalry should be stopped so that at least it doesn't become an obstacle towards the initiative of generating revenue.
Would it be a rivalry of context or content?
It's both, in the sense that as far as context is concerned, even when you hear stamp duty, you think it is an NIPOS. But in the actual aspect of the law, there is a law that says that it's now at the door of the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
Yes, the law, or laws as the case may be, or policies as the case may be. Because when we begin to have what we call it policy somersault, or sometimes when you
more of conflicts,
or conflicts, right? Then it becomes difficult.
I'm going to raise. I have a red flag.
I understand.
For Kirian.
The point should be made clear here. That yes, like you said, if it talked about stamp duty, everybody would think of NIPOS, for instance, and NIPOS says that they have an account at the CBN dedicated to that account. So now what comes up again is that the FIRS also has a point to say, look, this has been domiciled at our doorstep. So how do we reconcile that? It's an agency thing.
I will give you a red card if you respond. We've run out of time.
I was going to just say that it can be resolved. One is domicile Ministry of Finance, the other is Ministry of Communication. And
Thank you, Bayo. Thank you, Bayo. Have a lovely day, and as we say, break a leg. All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria and the network service. Don't go away. Our conversation will begin right now.
Childhood non-stop. Non-stop childhood. Let's go.
Oh, stop. There are germs. You'll fall sick. Daughter, why don't you stop them?
Mom, stopping the kids from playing stops the learning. That's why we stop the germs.
Indeed, Safeguard fights against germs. Safeguard removes 99% of germs.
Why don't you stop them? We have to stop. Not the kids, but...
Non-stop childhood.
Ankara shopping with the right place,
That one no fine.
No, it's too dull.
This one.
Oh wow, it's beautiful. Omo, this fabric, it gon' fade though.
Yeah.
Look, make I tell you something. The new area Ankara, it go take good care of it.
So right.
Not lie, not true.
And the price, cheap.
Try new Ariel on your Ankara and colors now.
We are still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Our conversation this morning is on ensuring peaceful Edo governorship election as tension is gradually building up ahead of the September 19 election in that state. Of course, that's the heartbeat of the nation, we call it, Edo State. And as the state is christened, how the tension can be doused towards a peaceful election is our focus this morning. And before we begin to look into it critically, let's first of all have this background report as put together by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
Violence has trailed the commencement of the Edo State governorship election campaign, raising concerns as to whether the election scheduled to hold on September 19 will not be marked by violence. Despite several meetings to commit the governorship candidates of the 14 political parties participating in the poll towards a peaceful process, palpable tension is still being witnessed in the build-up to the elections. Even the electoral umpire, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), has warned the major actors against compromising the electoral process by resorting to violence, threatening that it will withdraw from the electoral process if violence becomes the hallmark of the process.
But as I said, and I keep repeating myself, anybody who thinks that he can influence the people's choice on election day through violence is wasting his time. If there is violence, we'll simply withdraw and we'll see who will declare winner in that manner.
Many political observers have condemned the trend in Edo State, wondering if things need to go this way just to elect a governor. Some political experts maintain that for violence-free poll to be achieved in Edo State, security officials, INEC and other stakeholders within and outside the state will need to work at curtailing the excesses of the political actors before, during and after the elections. How can peaceful election be achieved in Edo State without much rancor of violence? Guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will provide their perspectives shortly.
All right, we're set to go because all our guests are right here in the studio and, of course, from our Benin Network Center. So let me quickly welcome them. First, we have let me welcome the Director of Voter Education and Publicity of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Nick Dazang. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure to have you. And we also have here in the studio my sister, friend, and our colleague, Esther Uzoma. Of course, she's the election observer and co-convener Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room. Esther, good to have you once again.
Fantastic. Good morning.
All right, you're welcome indeed. And we probably have here Dr. Kabiru Adamu. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, of course, is a security risk management expert and a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. Dr. Adamu, you're welcome.
Thank you, Kiran. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, and from Benin, right where the action is, we have joining us Osawaru Okonzua. is a public affairs analyst. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the program.
Morning. Glad to be here.
Claire.
All right, let's start with you from Benin, which is, of course, the epicenter of the issue we are discussing today. What are your major... Give us a sense of the scenario. What are your concerns? What is playing out at the moment?
Well, I think a high-energy drama is playing out, a game of wheat probably taken to the very margins, and on account of the method apparently used by the dominant actors in the field, I think a sense of apprehension is spreading, and that sense of apprehension is also being addressed, just like your background report said. And we do hope that we are going to conduct an election that will be satisfactory to both the voters and those who are going to be looking at us.
All right, let's remain with you. Since we are in Benin, you have already told us that there's a sense of apprehension in Benin City, and then we were talking about individuals or persons or the electorate who are actually going to be directly involved during this election. Give us an idea of the feeling or the feelings of Edo people who are going to, be going to the polls to cast their vote. There's apprehension. There's almost a war, if you like. And that does not really tell good about Edo. Last time we had a discussion on Edo election, and the two parties in question actually made it clear that Edo is not known for violence when it comes to election. They both agreed, the two persons who represented the two major parties, the APC and PDP, that is not known for violence. But this time around, what is being envisaged is an outright war, so to speak, right? So now, how are Edo people feeling? Are they really in the mood to vote, considering what is playing out at the moment?
Said confidently at this stage is that there is a very high level of arousal. People are expecting September 19 to come, and is right, because it will be determined who is going to be the governor beyond November 12th, this very year, for another 4 years. And though people are politically sophisticated, they know where the lines are drawn, they know what's excessive and what is within range as well. The question of violence, of course, will deter some people. We wouldn't know until the very day of the election. But the responsibility to keep the atmosphere sane lies with people of Edo, but more with people who are entrusted with the responsibility of security and general law enforcement. So I think Edo people are ready. The mood is very, very clear, it's palpable. And I think they are ready. Most people are going to collect their PVCs. The political parties themselves are canvassing support from different nooks and crannies of the state. And don't forget that this is a contest, really. And apart from the violence we are all trying to avoid, the very fact that people are very expectant is good for democracy. People are aware of what the stakes are, that we are going to select or elect our chief executive for under 4 years, and information is flowing in every direction. And I think that is supposed to be a good thing by itself, that there's a lot of vigor and energy in the atmosphere. So that should be sustained so long as we can filter out violence or the threat of violence. And as I said a while ago, that would be the responsibility essentially of general law enforcement, to make the atmosphere safe for people to come out on election day and decide who our next governor will be.
Thank you. Esther, you listened to him. First of all, he has talked about the tension and apprehension, but he was quick to also say that those are being addressed. I don't know what your reading is. He's also talked about vigor and energy. Is the energy coming from Edo? Is it one that promotes democracy, or one that is it one that enhances it, or what? What's your reading?
Well, you see, he called it a high energy drama. But if you look at it through legal lens, threat of violence is a crime. It's a criminal conduct. Threat of violence, when you threaten to unleash violence, you have committed an electoral crime. You see, this is a season, something is happening, to our elections. We seem to take it for granted, that these people will just talk and it will be, it's just talk. But the law criminalizes those conducts. It appears that the merchants of violence, outlaws, are in charge. People who the law knows, these are people who were existing outside the fringes of the law. They have taken the stage. You know, they say everything and we know this person. These are people who are known to tread on violence. You know, they just gather and wait for a time like this. It's happening in Edo now. All right, we saw it happening in Lagos, all over. It appears that our electoral seasons are periods for outlaws. You know, you give them the mic, you know, nobody tells them, they just take the center stage and just unleash fear on the citizens. That is where we are now. It is not high energy drama. These are persons who are consciously breaking the law. You see, and it appears that our law enforcement is just it's just mere talk. No, it's not mere talk. It's criminalized conduct. When will we begin to treat such, you know, lavish, vulgar statements? Treat it for what it is. People usually say things before they act them out. You see, and one thing that must happen in these elections, you see, what we saw in Rivers, for instance, I can tell you that because I observed that election, Governor Wike demystified the so-called federal agents. Every attempt was resisted by that governor. Let us not see another demystification of federal agents in Edo. Support both parties. Support the people. Don't let any party coerce them. Let us not see fictitious fake policemen again, like we saw in Kogi. Let's not see them in Edo State. People who make verbose utterances, who tread on violence. Let me tell you, these are criminals. Treat it for what it is. It is not just election talk. It is not drama. They are breaking the law. Let's treat it as such, Claire.
All right, and let's begin. Dr. Kabiru Adamu here, who is a security risk management expert. My brother, you've listened to Esther and, of course, our guests in Benin, and they, of course, know where their opinions stand. And last week when we had this program on the Edo election, you were one of the guests. Right, now, what is playing out in Edo is being seen as a planned violence by both parties. Exactly. Because the comments being made by stakeholders in the two parties, the comments are taken towards a war that should come perhaps before and on the election day. Now, in this sense, in this connection, what is your view? What are you envisaging? And what is the best option for any security agency or agencies, to tackle the Edo election that has become a very serious affair, considering the level of threats, the level of violence, being unleashed and all of that?
Thank you, Kieran, and I'm glad we have an INEC official here. So with his permission, I'm going to borrow his mouth and say a few things that I know INEC is doing. As the electoral body, everything we do should be benchmarked on their action. I'm also going to speak a bit around the other security agencies that have the mandate to provide the right environment for elections to hold. INEC has an interagency consultative committee on electoral security. INEC also has the latest model for assessing risks during an election. In security, we call it the Enterprise Security Risk Management. In this instance, an election security risk management model. That model allows you to look at two aspects of election security risk, the internal aspect and the external aspect. Now, in this instance, what we know for a fact is that the outcome of the assessment by INEC indicates clearly that all the ingredients for violence before, during, and post-election, unfortunately, exist. And I'm very happy to note that INEC has attempted to address these factors that it observed from its assessment. I'll quickly mention some of the factors. The first and most important one is the existence of discontent, what I'll call social and economic discontent within the environment, in this instance within Edo. we are very, very clear, very, very sure that this discontent exists. Starting from the parliament, the state assembly, we all are witnesses to what happened after the elections. How, I don't want to go into the politics of it, but we know that currently the house is divided. And in fact, as we speak, police are standing guard outside the house with two camps, frankly divided. Negative mobilization has occurred from both sides. So that ingredient is clear. The other ones are even the incumbent governor himself with regards to his, the power he has to either mobilize or demobilize. And then, of course, the other contending parties. Like I said, I don't want to go into the politics of it, so I don't want to name individuals, but we all know that there are contending parties that, frankly, have drawn their daggers and their boots are really stuck on the ground in terms of what the interest they want to project. Non-state actors that are involved in the mobilization as well as in the projection of security within the state. Almost all the video clips I've seen in the state, beyond the uniformed security personnel that you and I know, you would see young men that are either projecting or attempting to protect an interest. Very worrisome. Ahead of the elections, there were instances where certain individuals stopped movement on a particular route in order to achieve a particular objective. So the point I'm trying to make is, from a risk management perspective, all the ingredients, unfortunately, for violence are already in place. I'm happy an INEC official is here. INEC has put in place certain measures to ensure that the environment is safe for an election. So to answer your question, Kirian, unfortunately, the projection and the prognosis is that there will be violence during the election. And INEC, as the electoral umpire, is putting in place certain measures to ensure that this violence does not take place. Unfortunately, there are certain elements beyond the control of INEC. And specifically, I'm talking about the security agencies. INEC does not have monopoly, as it were, over those security agencies. It is their role to provide the right environment. And because the environment is already tainted, as it were, with this underlying discontent that I've mentioned at the beginning, then we do have ourselves, unfortunately, a huge challenge in the sense that it is these security agencies that we expect. Perhaps in the course of the discussion, we can talk about the functions of each and every one of these security agencies. My sister here has mentioned the issue of criminality. There is a security agency that is meant to stop that criminality from happening. Why are they not doing it before the elections? Are they going to wait until the elections take place and we see the violence before they take action? Unfortunately, some of us are not very optimistic about that. So that's my initial thought on this. Perhaps in the course of the discussion I can expand.
Okay, let me still stay with you before I bring in the INEC Director of Voter Education. In your evaluation of the stake in Edo, is it such that you're surprised at what is playing out?
Unfortunately, no. In the sense that as a risk management expert, all the ingredients for violence in an environment, I've already identified them. I do have a consultancy. I have personnel that are working in Edo, and beyond, not just for the election purposes, for my own risk management purposes, those ingredients affect day-to-day existence. Remember, I said electioneering periods only exacerbate this existing socio-economic discontent within the society. They are not new. Non-state actors that I've mentioned, the failed criminal justice system that is failing to punish offenders, actions of politicians. We can talk about even the political parties themselves that do not have a self-appraisal mechanism to discipline their members, and so many other factors that are existing within the society are already there ahead of the election. So those things, unfortunately, are not being manufactured today. They are things that exist. They are only being exacerbated because of the stakes. We can talk about the stake of the Edo itself within the geopolitics of Nigeria. Why are the two dominant parties, putting all their stakes in terms of winning the elections in Edo State? Of course, the issues around the 2023 is another factor that we must talk about. Then the personalities involved. How desperate are they to win the election? Those are all, they are not new things. They are things that exist already. And to answer your question directly, we take them into consideration. And I'm hoping I'm hoping, with all the sense of responsibility I have as a Nigerian, that the security agencies, especially the chairperson of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, takes all of this into consideration. I'm speaking specifically regarding the Office of the National Security Advisor, which is the co-chair of that agency, because he has the coordinating element within that body. And so if he takes note of all of these things that exist, then perhaps measures will be put in place to prevent an escalation of the situation.
Nick, has any of your rules and regulations been flouted so far?
Several. And
what are you doing about it?
And that explains why last Thursday the Commission had to literally read a riot act to the politicians. The Commission threatened that if violence continues, it might even stop the conduct of the election. We feared for the worst because supporters, followers tend to take their cue from the political leaders. And we felt that if we didn't do anything at that point, if we didn't intervene and say, look, you have to stop this, things will escalate, things will worsen, and it will affect the conduct of the elections. Don't forget that each time elections are not concluded on the first ballot, they are rendered inconclusive. We have to go back and conduct elections in polling units where elections, are cancelled. And matters are compounded by the fact that we are now going to conduct this election under the COVID-19 dispensation, something that has never happened before. And you can see that the conducting elections under that purview is strenuous, in the sense that even in terms of logistics, you have to spend twice as much to convey, ad hoc staff and your own staff. If, for example, if you are deploying, you used to deploy one vehicle to take 18 number of ad hoc staff, you now have to deploy 2 or 3. You have to deploy sanitizers, you have to use thermometers, you have to insist on physical and social distancing in concert with the health and guidelines and so on. Now, this in itself is stressful. And then this stress is being compounded by the inflammatory and bellicose statements being issued by statements and other actions such as the destruction of campaign materials, billboards, and so on and so forth. And worried by that, the Commission felt that there was the need for it to call the politicians to order. But beyond that, what the Commission is trying to do is, in spite of COVID-19, to engage with the key stakeholders in this election, that is the political parties. And consequently, the INEC chairman is leading a high-powered delegation to Benin next week, Monday. And after engaging with the stakeholders, a number of national commissioners and directors will remain and will continue to engage with the stakeholders there until, the conduct of the election. We believe that the augury, the omen is not good from the intelligence we have gathered after deploying our own risk management tools. But matters can be salvaged if we can continue to engage with stakeholders, and that is what we intend to do.
But sorry, Konzoa, you agree that you're not going to have an easy election in Edo State, all things being equal, considering what has played out so far. That one is you have to stamp it. Now, what are the measures being put in place by INEC to confront this violence posture that we have all seen? And if you are believing that the tide, will be stemmed between now and September, I'm not sure we're telling ourselves the truth, because talking about the individuals concerned, Yamu was the governor candidate of PDP in the last election, while the incumbent governor was for APC, and there's a kind of swap this time around. So you can see where the fight is coming from. And of course, the followers are not also helping matters, based on the fact that, look, everybody believes that it is Either we get it or not. So there's a fight going on. So how do you intend to address, in terms of even conducting the election itself and coming up with a result that will be transparent, a result that Nigerians will believe is a real result? Because after all this, post-election is another issue altogether, just as the Kabiru had just mentioned. So please, how do you intend to, tackle all of this? I know you have already told us that you're going to have a stakeholders meeting on Monday, and perhaps some of your men will remain in Benin, to monitor, whatever is going on, perhaps before the elections. But I'm so worried about the possibility of INEC, conducting free and fair election in the very atmosphere that we are seeing in Benin at the moment.
Well, we are not underestimating the situation, really. And that explains why we had to proactively say, look, you have to check yourselves. You cannot continue to behave the way you are doing. But I'm very optimistic, and the Commission is very optimistic, that by the time you begin to engage with some of these gladiators, by the time you begin to make them see reason to appreciate that you cannot continue to carry on the way you are doing, we are likely to have some sanity. I'm optimistic about that. And the Commission is not going to relent on that, in spite of the fact that if you looked at the footage before we started this program, you could see clearly that the INEC chairman was uncharacteristically and unusually angry. I've rarely seen him this angry, and that underscores to you, it emphasizes to you how the Commission is taking things. But we should not also underestimate the capacity of our politicians to show accommodation, to sheath their swords, and we're going to work on that.
Okay, let me go to Benin. Mr. Okonzwa, we understand that the factions at the Edo Assembly are, of course, exchanging words over whether or not to sit in the supposedly rehabilitated, or the assembly that is in the process of being rehabilitated, that they will sit in that complex, and the other faction is saying, of course, opposing it. What might be the implication should, the 17 lawmakers go ahead and sit in that complex, within that complex?
Well, it might prove provocative to some, but generally, if not for the same import it has on violence spilling out to the public arena, it will be a matter for the legislature themselves, for the lawmakers themselves to sort out. And the situation of the House of Assembly, though, is already a mesh that our course probably will help us sort out strand by strand. Because the matter did not start only yesterday. It's been there for at least a year. So we do hope that our courts, in this instance, as part of general law enforcement, will authoritatively state who is right and who is wrong. Because you have views for and views against now. So for the moment, so long as there's no violence and all they are doing is talking, that is supposed to be the work they are paid to do, to talk and debate and make sure we have good laws to govern the state. Then if you allow me, go back to the issue we were discussing before. I'm a little afraid too that some kind of sense of frenzy is being generated by even the media and other people looking at the Edo scenario. If you have a state like Edo that is a kind of watershed between two political parties in terms of our geopolitical arrangement in Nigeria, do you expect, as high as the stakes are, that the people who are mobilizing on the other side, because we are limiting this into a kind of two-horse race now, would try to do their very best to clinch the trophy? So long as it's not going to be, the trophy is going to be a human call, it's not going to be a bloodletting process, and so on. As we have said, the process is simple. Election is supposed to be an impersonal process for selecting a person who will have the right to govern. So there is really no need for us to widen it into other things and bring all the other issues that pertain to us generally into the election. The election is just one process. We have all sorts of problems in the country that we need to solve. But for this election, we should not impute so many things into it. Edo State is a state of civilized citizens, and we are going to prove people wrong September 19th. The way the elections will be held, the way the winner will be declared, and the way the winner eventually would enjoy the mandate to govern. So the apprehension should not be overbloated. That is the point I'm trying to make. The security agents to do their work, the law enforcement agents to do their work, and as a matter of fact, just like the lady in the studio said a while ago, most of what we are having is extension of failure of law enforcement. There are laws that govern sedition, laws that govern incitement, laws that govern libel, laws that govern slander. So what is holding all these things back from being implemented? It's not about the election per se. These are things that have to do with our political culture generally. So I don't think the Edo election should be a kind of lightning rod for all that and a way of generally smearing the people of Edo as violent people. No, we are going to have a free, fair election for as long as INEC and the security agencies and the law enforcement agencies, our courts, and all those who are going to be actors in the process will play their role. We shouldn't entertain any fear or excessive fear. That is my stance.
Dr. Konzwa, we do share in your optimism for a free and fair election in Edo State, and that's one of the reasons we're having this conversation to seek ways on how we can ensure peaceful and free and fair election. But how would you describe or evaluate some of the comments that some of the political gladiators have been, throwing around? For instance, I want to quote, someone said, if they want violence, we will show them violence. And Esther here has said that is criminalizing the electoral process.
A while ago, what about our laws that regulate sedition, our laws that regulate incitement, our laws that regulate inflammatory comments? Are they not there? Why are they not being invoked? Those are not issues of the election. It's part of general culture we have allowed to evolve. So I believe if these laws are invited, if somebody made a statement that is careless, that is inciting the public to violence, why is the person not arrested? That doesn't have to do with September 19th. September 19th is to make the atmosphere conducive for the electorate to come out and choose their next governor. So it is the work of the Nigerian state itself to make sure this atmosphere is created. And as far as violence is concerned, what we are afraid of here is probably balance of terror. That should not be the gold standard. Any person who is threatening violence should be seen as affronting the Nigerian state. And the Nigerian state is supposed to have the responsibility to make sure every citizen is law-abiding. So I think the discussion, in my own assessment, if you permit me, is generally academic. Those who have the responsibilities should go and perform their duty so that people should come out on that day without fear of molestation and choose who their governor will be for next 4 years, for the 4 years after November 12th. So those are the things we should be encouraging. Law enforcement, security agencies, and even mobilize the voters themselves to come out, to encourage them that there should not be any fear. So that's what we should be doing. It's not a question of talking about the atmosphere. Any election is supposed to be an atmosphere of excitement. But because people are trying to say, these are the hopes and the aspirations they want to carry on for the next 4 years. We should make the environment conducive. That is our task, all of us. But the discussion about the election per se, I think, is overemphasized. The general condition needs to be controlled. All the laws, as I said before, about incitement, about sedition, libel, slander, they should all be activated. And you will see that the atmosphere will be clear.
Dr. Konzwa, it's important that we understand where the whole issue of violence is coming from. You recall that during the nomination of APC nomination for governorship candidate, that the incumbent governor was dropped by the APC. And of course, there was a big feud, between him and the immediate past chairman of the APC. See, this is, historical. Nigerians have followed this from the very beginning to the point where we are now, that we're listening to both parties, throwing challenges, kind of violent statements and making statements of war war in an election process. So that is the point. We have all understood what Edo, the build-up is all about before we got to the point we are today. So we're not saying that Edo is so violent, people that they are not civilized or wise people. We are following the trend of events and development before now, and now that we're going towards the election. So that is what I'd like you to take note of, because you are saying that our conversation is academic, and of course that the media is fueling the situation as if Edo has become a war theater. It is not true. No, we are following the trend of events and development in Edo State gradually as we proceed towards the election in September. Now, having said that, we're going to return to you, very shortly too, for further explanations on what is on ground in Edo, because you are there. Now back to Abuja, where we have Esther here. Esther, you have listened to him, and the optimism that he has, of course, put out, showing that, of course, it might not be as bad as we all think it's going to be. And you are an election observer, and you are going to be in Benin, if I'm sure you're going to be there to observe the election. And what will you be telling election observers with respect to what has played out all through the process now? How prepared are you going to be with respect to what has happened, what has played out, and how you intend to really carry out your election observation?
Cumulatively, the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room is mobilizing over 1,000 observers. Over 1,000. Now, the optimism expressed by Dr. Okonzwa is Pentecostal optimism. It's Pentecostal, you see. Yes, it is Pentecostal. It's not as bad, exercise faith. But all the indices, even by the security experts, and even by Clean Foundation, because we have people who are forerunners, who go and study the trends, indices, and they'll map up hotspots. They say, listen, observers do not go here. Observers, if you must go here, make sure you have 4 of you. You understand? Because this is how we make this. I've observed like 2 cycles of elections in Edo, and we are right now preparing even for Ondo. These are the things that help us. So I appreciate, his tending towards, this, it is well with Edo and other. But you see, these things are coming from there. They were not, this brouhaha was not generated. They are coming, there are things that are in situ. They are happening in Edo. And we will not play the ostrich. All right? That is why, for instance, NTA thinks is so important. So that we can bring out the issues, tease it out, name which agency is responsible for what. You understand? Galvanize them into action so that this scheduled war, let it not consume the cripple. Is that not what we say where I come from? I will kill you, a balance of terror. Suddenly, everybody has a mic. Suddenly, everybody is threatening the Nigerian system. What we are saying here is this. Amidst all these happenings, like he did say, what are the agencies of state doing? At what point? Federal Republic of Nigeria and Tinubu said, listen, you can investigate. If the person with immunity can be investigated, why don't you even provoke the protocol of investigation? Just start it so that people, and start from the big ones. I'm talking to the security agencies now. So that people will know that, listen, talk is not cheap. That there are consequences to those excessive statements. That is how you will engender peace now. It's not when people are saying, listen, I'm bringing thunder. You say, oh, no, nothing will happen. Somebody is threatening you with thunder. Was it not in Edo that there was a bomb explosion prior to this point? You see. So, but for me, I would like to appeal to the traditional seats. There's a special respect that Edo people, have for their traditional rulers. I think very, very strongly that there should be a statement, because I have had utterances from that throne that, made Edo people stand still. I think it is time to say, listen, anybody who sheds any blood, anybody who meets violence, so and so will happen. I think it is time to galvanize all the parasites of that office and, you know, call the citizens to order, because everybody is doing everything. And I don't know, that is why I'm saying the security, Nigeria, the federal forces, as they call them, let them not go to Edo and be demystified, like we can demystify them, like by trying to impose, and then there will be a pushback. They should appear neutral. People who are making these inflammatory statements should be brought to book. Start arraigning them first. Let them make statements. You understand what I mean? If that happens, their followers would have a cue. If this will happen to my big oga, what will happen to me when because they are clearly breaking the law.
Okay, Kabiru, is the scenario in Edo less important now, as Dr. Konzra would have us believe, in terms of security issues?
Clearly, unfortunately, no. Virtually every institution, agency, department that has the capacity to conduct an assessment has done that and has come out with a verdict indicating the possibility of during and post-election violence. In fact, the one that we all have no choice but to work with is the electoral empire itself. Is the constitutional body that has the responsibility to conduct such an assessment, and its verdict is clear, as stated by Nick here, indicating the possibility of violence. So yes, it's good to be optimistic. It's good to hope. But the reality is that you should, like we always say, hope for the best, but frankly plan for the worst. And everything that INEC is doing, I must, I don't want to patronize or seem as if I'm patronizing INEC, but the reality is that I'm very impressed with what INEC is trying to do ahead of the elections. Mr. Nick has mentioned the issue around COVID-19. It has come out with a guideline for elections during a pandemic. More importantly, it has come out with a standard operating procedure and guidelines for the security agencies during the election. It was a review of the existing protocols it had, and it just did one, I think, about a month ago. Mr. Nick can clear that. So all those are, commendable efforts. But beyond that, we've identified the stakeholders in the course of our discussion. And for me, the two biggest stakeholders there are the political parties themselves. So the politicians, clearly, and then, of course, the security agencies. I'm not so impressed, and I'm duly cautious here with these two, segments of stakeholders. What are the political parties themselves doing to check their members? Because frankly, it is not ghosts that are making this statement. It is not ghosts that are, rolling out youths to go and block routes or to go to the National Assembly. It is not ghosts that are deploying security agencies or, doing all the things that we're seeing. They are human beings, and they're either affiliated with political parties or affiliated with certain individuals. So what are the political parties themselves doing to check those type of excesses? And then more importantly, the security agencies. I think one theme that has come out of our discussion here is the role of the security agencies. Why haven't they come out to carry out their functions as it is stated? So Edo is what it is, unfortunately, not because Edo is going to have an election, but because Edo has those existing issues that are in place. And yes, the campaigning, the issues around the election have exacerbated those existing issues. But, I don't want to close this statement without saying that it is not that it's not salvageable. We can salvage this, and we've identified some of the areas to salvage it. The engagement that Nick mentioned, ahead of all the elections, the previous elections, those kind of engagements were positive. But beyond the engagement, like, some European countries say, trust is good, but control is better. So you can do that kind of engagement. You can get them to commit themselves. But what do you do to ensure that where they break those commitments, there is penalty associated with it? It is not the role of INEC. Yes, INEC can do some elements of that penalization, but it is the security agencies, unfortunately.
Sorry, Kiran. Yeah. I still like to, Dick. Kabiru, I'd like for you to probably enumerate, if you may, elements of, some of those actions or inactions that have, that are prone to violence, that have come up from the scenario in Edo?
Thank you,
Claire.
Claire.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have listed some of these factors, and I know they are controversial, but we use them in our risk assessment templates. One of them is discontent among the citizenry, existing socioeconomic cleavages, ethno-religious tensions, which clearly, unfortunately, Edo doesn't have that much. Then institutional bias, that has been mentioned, and we need to talk about it. Poverty, and we can talk about poverty. You give somebody 1,000 naira. Unfortunately, with that 1,000 naira, he can kill. Because frankly, at that point in time, all he needs is probably to go and buy one drug, and then, he uses it. So poverty and drug addiction and whatever. Exclusionary politics. Which unfortunately is also at play. There are certain individuals that have, they feel shortchanged during the primaries. Some of them have gone to court. Whether they are going to rely on that criminal justice system to get justice, or they are going to mobilize to seek to get justice, that's another thing. The negative mobilization, that has been mentioned in the course of our discussion. Then there are several others too. History of violence within the state. I mean, we don't need to go far in that. Edo, unfortunately, has that history. We need to attempt that. Then the adoption of non-state actors in the security infrastructure within the state. Existence and increased activities by armed groups within the state. We've seen that ahead of the elections. And then, of course, degree of control by the incumbent. That is strongly being contested, as we know. Then stability of internal state party politics. We can also talk about that. Then bid for second term by the incumbent governor. And then lastly, the strategic nature of the election. Why are the two contending parties so interested in capturing the state? I've talked about 2023. It's a possibility. Then the Niger Delta politics. Currently, almost all the Niger Delta states with one party. How important would it be if Edo, for instance, falls into the other party, or the dominant party within that region, takes control of Edo? So all these are the issues at play. And in grading them from a risk assessment perspective, you give 1 to 5, or depending on whatever.
We'll get back to you for you to grade them for us.
Yes, that's a very good analysis of what has played out or playing out in Edo State at the moment. And as we make progress in this conversation, we might actually go to those 1 to 5, like he mentioned, and see how we can do further explanation on that for better understanding by our viewers. Now, let's come back to that.
Trying to interject, and my own optimism is not backed by faith.
It's not a Pentecostal optimism.
It's not evangelical. But from what we saw in the by-election we conducted in Nasarawa on Saturday, the security agencies comported themselves with a lot of professionalism, as a result of which we had no disruption in the conduct of the election. There was no violent incident in the conduct of the election. The ingredients.
That was the State House.
Yes. You could say that it's a small election. You could also say that the ingredients that Dr. Kabiru identified may not all manifest there, or may not have manifested themselves before the conduct of that election, but certainly there were, reports of violence around that constituency before the conduct of that election. And the template we deployed in Nasarawa was to continue to engage with the stakeholders there. And in spite of the fact that the chairpersons of ANEC have never, graced any stakeholders forum in elections below the presidential and governorship elections. In this time around, the chairman ANEC and 6 national commissioners were in Nasarawa for a stakeholders forum on Thursday, preceding the conduct of the election on Saturday. And we also paid a courtesy call on the emir who, pledged support to the conduct of the election. But the stakes
in Nasarawa by-election was not as high as...
Yes, but what we are saying is, if that can be extrapolated to Ondo and Edo, you know, we could see some substantial improvement, and that is the basis for my own optimism.
And these are states that have different characteristics when it comes to elections. Yes. Of course, from what Kabiru has told us, Edo has some peculiarities which he highlighted.
I agree with that, but
I am coming because you are going to conduct an election.
Yes.
We expect to have results from that election.
Yes.
It's a process. Then also we know about rigging. Okay, which is a very big aspect of this election, rigging, and who does the rigging, and the process of rigging, which you are going to be in charge of, you are going to control. Now, what are the plans? Because there's going to be rigging in the Edo election. There are no two ways about it, because that is the trend. Right now, I
don't know about that. But
what is INEC's strategy? What are your strategies to achieve hitch-free election in terms of election without bias, election that Nigerians can trust that the result is real, election that will not bring about a post-election court cases or litigations and what have you? Because of course you know that Edo fell out of the the election cycle because of litigation, right? And nobody will want that to repeat itself again. So what is the strategy you have, especially with the security agencies that will assist you in the conduct of this election?
Yes, what we've done, and we experimented with the Nasarawa State House of Assembly election, was to increase our transparency measures. And we did that by introducing a results portal where you can view the outcome of elections in each of the polling units electronically. It's a replication of the Form 60E that we introduced in 2011.
Are you going to deploy it in a Edo election?
Yes, we deployed it also today in Nasarawa State House of Assembly election, and we are going to deploy that particular portal in subsequent conduct of elections. But what I was trying to say is just a replication of the poster form that we used in 2011 and other elections subsequently, whereby at the end of the conduct of the election in a polling unit, the results are entered and then they are pasted either on the wall or on a tree at the polling unit, and the voters can cite the outcome from, in each of the polling units. And what we observed at the end of the election on Saturday was that not less than 1,000, citizens of Nasarawa State, visited, they logged into that portal and were able to view the outcome of the election. So with such transparency measures and the Form 60E poster that we used before, I believe that it will be very difficult for anyone to manipulate the outcome beyond the polling unit, because the concerns we've been having have had to do with...
Will your portal be free from cyber hack?
Well, so far we've not had any cyber hack. We deployed it just for one election, and we protect it in such a manner that it won't be hacked. But what I'm saying is that using that, you can view all the results in all the polling units and add for yourself what each candidate has scored in the election. And the concern has been that elections, the outcome of elections are manipulated at the level of collation. So if you are a serious candidate and you want to know the outcome, all you need to do is to deploy your staff to view this portal and take down the results. You are not allowed to download and print, because the PDF does not allow you to do that, but it allows you to view it. And we believe that will also check whoever might want to rig or manipulate the outcome of the election. And once people begin to see that the process is invested with transparency, the more people will trust it, and the more people can deploy the outcome that they have viewed either in court or in the media to defend themselves or to make their case. So it's one of the things we intend to do, and going forward, and law permitting, we intend to, introduce other innovations that will invest the process with more transparency.
Okay, Nick.
Claire, I think that issue of portal is very important with respect to the Edo election. As a matter of fact, you deployed it in Nasarawa and it worked perfectly well.
We did, and it worked very
if
well.
you can do that in Edo, which of course is a larger election that has so many polling units across Edo, well, that would be a plus for INEC.
Kieran, I want to return to Kebiru and then I'll come back to Esther. Kabiru, you earlier on when you started, your conversation, your contributions, you appreciated the efforts made by INEC. I like for you to tell us in which aspects, because with regards to even compliance with COVID-19 protocols, we've seen massive flouting of the rules in some of the campaigns. With also regards to hate speech and non-conformity with the extant laws, electoral laws, we've seen, like Esther said, a break, or a flouting of those laws. When you talk about institutional bias, can you break it down for us and what you mean exactly by that?
The perception, and in some instances the reality, that government agencies, either at the federal or the state level, have taken sides. In simple terms, that's institutional bias. Is that an issue at the moment? Yes. The state assembly that is occupied by the police, there is already a perception that it is an attempt by federal agencies to intervene in the state. So that ingredient is there. As with regards to INEC in particular, the major issue, and I would be very happy if Nick can take this forward, is the neutrality of the security agencies. My friend here, Esther, has mentioned how, quote and unquote, in Rivers State there was an attempt to demystify the security agencies. I know that that's another topic for discussion. However, there is a perception among the majority of Nigerians that sometimes the security agencies are used to, control the outcome of elections.
That's right.
That's the perception, whether it's the reality or not. So my worry, and that's why I said I'll be glad if Nick can take this forward, anything INEC would do to dissuade and reduce that perception would be helpful. I know INEC has had a meeting of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security. The contentious issue, which seems to have been addressed, but we are not clear yet, is whether INEC has the power to deploy security agencies for election, to protect electoral materials, because I think that's the function of the security agencies. They don't have any role as far as voting itself is concerned beyond providing a safe environment for voting to occur. However, in the past, we've seen cases where unfortunately they've done beyond that mandate that they have. And I think that's the worry, and I want to emphasize this. What punitive measure, what penalty has been meted out to those agencies, those government departments that were found guilty of that? A clear case, I think, was in Rivers State, where a particular security department attempted to take control of the INEC, I think it was a collation center in that state. And then, of course, there was a confrontation between that particular security agency and the other one that had the mandate to protect the agency. Till date, we've not seen any punitive measure in terms of penalty meted out to that. And we know that the ICES, Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, has the mandate, firstly, to ensure that the environment is safe for elections, and then not only that, to review the role of the various security departments within the election. We can also speak about the INEC department that is responsible for security. I have a bit of concern regarding the effectiveness and the efficiency of that particular department. If the IG of police, as an example, is saying that I have responsibility to deploy my men during elections, and not only stops there, he goes ahead to raise the budget and then submits that budget for appraisal and then for passing either at the National Assembly or to whichever body. And INEC now comes in to say, no, by virtue of Section 29, subsection 3 of the Elections Act as amended, we have that mandate. Until date, there has been no clarity to that disagreement between the two bodies, mainly because they say follow the money and then, you know, you would know where the issues are. So these are the issues at play, Claire. These are areas that are grey, and I think the only way to solve that is for INEC to enhance the capacity of its security department. If I'm right, and Nick can correct this, there are officers from the DSS and from the police that are currently heading that security department. And my take is they do not have the wherewithal to challenge their various bodies, because the co-chair of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security. So solution, as far as I'm concerned, is for INEC to get an independent, very senior security, private, to head that department, who has the wherewithal to now exercise Section 29, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act as amended. It is only when that is done that the neutrality of the security agencies will be maintained.
I think that will depend to a large extent on what the law says about that.
Yes,
because I'm
observed.
sure that INEC will not go out of his way to begin to put in place what the law does not allow.
For now, it's the remit of the security agencies to protect the environment for elections. But we've always, canvassed that this can be reversed, legally, and borrowing from other jurisdictions. For example, in India, during the conduct of elections, the chief electoral officer takes over the security agencies, and he's responsible for their conduct, he's responsible for their punishment where there are infractions. But what we have now, I'm sorry to say, is a situation where when Eisenhower became president of the United States, he was commander of the Supreme Allied Forces, where he could give orders and soldiers could carry those orders. And then Field Marshal Montgomery remarked that now you give an order and nobody will carry it. So what we have is a situation where securing the environment for elections is not INEC's remit. And until you change the law, until you invest INEC with that, and also until the security agencies comport themselves professionally.
Okay, Nick, we will put you on hold because you've said something, and Esther says she disagrees with you. When we come back, we're going on a short break. When we come back, Esther will air her opinion to what you've said with regards to your powers. Your vehemence. Yes. All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll be right back.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 22 55 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
All right. Claire, you're welcome back, really. And I'd like us to return to Benin. It looks as if we have forgotten Dr. Sawaru or Konzua. Dr. Konzua, you have listened to other guests actually made some points in some of the issues that have been raised, some of which, of course, may concern the electoral process itself and how we expected the Edo people to conduct themselves as well during this election. Now, let's hear from you on some of the issues raised, especially by Dr. Kabiru and Nick Dazang of INEC with respect to how this election has been planned and how INEC intends to conduct itself and, of course, ensure that the security agents who are going to be on duty on that day will adhere to what the law says and, of course, be professional about the conduct of the election.
Well, I couldn't agree more with Dr. Adamu. He's been very, very scientific and truly, truly analytical. The point I have been making is that violence is not going to be a foregone conclusion in Edo come September 19th. And Edo will not be a combat zone because of the election. All the other points that have been made, yes, they are also cogent. Just like I believe violence is not inevitable. I take that position because I live here and I feel the pulse of many people here. Now, all these other issues that Adamu especially has been talking about, they are general issues. How to improve our electoral process. It's not about Edo alone. It's about our country. Just that Edo election is a long-standing election. And it's probably an opportunity for us to correct some of the defects in our electoral system. And for me, the way to go is probably to inch at it, one step at a time, to make sure that the will of the people is expressed, if not exactly, definitely approximately. That is the point we are saying, we are trying to make. And when it comes to Edo, for instance, all the factors, again referring to Dr. Adamu, they operate here, they operate across the country. In terms of poverty indices and the other things he's mentioned, Edo is definitely not the worst. The only thing is that we are going to conduct an election in a month's time and 2 weeks or so. So for me, election violence is going to be a foregone conclusion here. And as we have said, and I still contend, the process is very, very simple if the different agencies will do their work with conscience and a sense of duty. INEC already said it's not its function to control the security environment. Granted. Now, the security agencies, will they do their work? Who is going to prod or encourage them to do their work? Maybe that's a matter to be discussed. And then, much earlier on, most of the things we are complaining about, I did say that there are laws already governing those things. Why are those laws not being enforced? That will not be the function of Edo voters or a thing that comes to the fore because of the Edo election. So if somebody is making a fire-setting statement, why is the CP not arrested him? Why do you have to wait and heap everything on the Edo election? If somebody is misbehaving, is giving to misconduct, why don't you apply the laws against him? So, sorry, it appears I am repeating myself over and over, but I believe the process is very, very simple. Let all the component agencies do their work, safeguard the environment, so that Edo electorate will go out on that day and choose who is going to govern them. For me, it's that simple. Well, at this stage, we ought to be encouraging people to come out and vote to assure them the environment will be safe for them. And not drumming the fact that Edo is going to be a war zone. I still disagree because I live here and I see what is going on here. A person who lives here, who mingles with the people, should have an opinion that is superior to those who probably do desk review of reports. So I believe we should invest all it will take to make the Edo election safe. But violence is not going to be a foregone conclusion, no matter how rigorous the reports have been. I stick with that.
So we actually share in your optimism, and that's one of the reasons why we had to return to you, because it did appear before now that we're against your optimism, because you are in Edo, you live there, you know your people, and I'm sure on that day you're going to vote. So you must have given us, the pulse of the people of Edo State who are going to be involved in this election. All right, Esther, you are to speak to some of the issues raised by Nick Dazang of INEC, and of course part of the issues also were raised by Dr. Kabiru Adamu with respect to the risk management aspect of this conversation that he raised a short while ago.
Can I ask you to hold on? Let's take a tweet. So we said we should take a tweet. The producer is asking we should take a tweet first. Yes, can we just quickly take the tweet and then you take your questions? Okay, let's begin with Unwo Ogogo Ikechukwu 7 So it says, to ensure a peaceful election in Edo State, candidates, parties, and loyalists should not forget that holding a public office is a privilege to humbly and sincerely work for the development of the state and well-being of the populace.
All right, from Mike Anyakwa, gladiators in the coming governorship election in Edo State should play according to rules. The accusations and counter only help in exacerbating already charged polity.
Usman, candidates for every party shall sign peace accord in which he or she shall be held responsible for any violence carried out by the party members. Peace accord.
Well, free from innocent, free and fair election in Edo State depends largely on the two contenders, PDP and APC. Overheating the polity before the day of election sends a clear warning and wrong signals to electorate. Security agencies should protect and secure the process.
Okay, Dr. B. Tijani, Edo election will be a water test of election with COVID-19 pandemic, while this will test the reality of Nigeria's preparedness for the 2023 election. We shall remember that outsiders will not come to rescue the people. It must be done by the Edo people.
Delegate Solomon, aside assuring peaceful gubernatorial elections, the INEC, the state and the electioneering stakeholders must ensure the election is held in a secured environment, while also ensuring all COVID-19 protocols are observed to the letter.
And Law A4C, Edo Gobo election may turn out to be violent from the look of things. Considering the level of desperation and frustration playing out, INEC have to wield the big stake of disqualifying any party flouting the rules of engagement, just like Zamfara case.
Utula Sunday, Edo people, this is another opportunity for you to exercise your franchise. Please do not misuse it this time around. Vote wisely, and remember, election is not a war zone. Your PVC is your power.
And Steve Bond 007, if the hate speech bill is for real, then many people on both sides should be looked into. The tension is so obvious.
Yeah, we did have a litany of tweets here where P.O. Yabanji, politicians who win elections by violence, thuggery and rigging have nothing good to offer. Do not prosecute any thug if arrested, but the candidates that sponsor them. As long as the identity of the sponsors of violence are covered, there shall be no end to violence.
Okay, Chris Simeon, Edo people and Nigerians want peaceful election come September. In this case, let all political parties and their leaders sign peace accord.
All right, Olusegun. Well, like Kejo Labaji says, the two leading candidates, along with their supporters, must drop ego and allow service to people to drive their aspiration to govern Edo people.
Okay, Olusegun Felix says, with this removal of roof at the assembly, impeachment and cross-carpeting everywhere, there is trouble in the air.
Okay, this is Ibrahim Moduaji. From all indications, it shows that the election will be characterized by violence. Various stakeholders talking of security agencies, INEC and community leaders need to brace up for the challenge ahead of to ensure peaceful elections.
And Omogbola Babs, all the relevant stakeholders, security agencies, INEC, and all monitoring groups must play their parts without partisanship. The parties in the race too must work on their followers not to heat up the polity unnecessarily. One man, one woman, one vote, peace.
All right, Ibrahim Abdul Salam Bello says the federal government is charged to do everything within the reach to make sure peace reigns in Edo State before and after the September election. It is glaring that tension has enveloped the atmosphere in Edo State, and we must not allow that to consume the long-existing peace in Edo State.
And Yunusa Idris, for peace to reign, INEC should ensure one vote, one person, zero tolerance of rigging from political parties.
All right, from Cecilia Korama, the spirit of desperation for power has bedeviled most of the politicians in the forthcoming elections. Hence, every sense of reasoning is being thrown into the winds. INEC must rise up to the occasion. And that's about the last one that we have tweets this morning. And let's bring in Esther.
Yeah, Esther.
Esther, I hope you recall the issues.
We're talking about, Doc brought up the need for INEC to have, a security outfit. So I wanted to, make my views, on that. Number one, INEC is the lead agency during elections. That is settled. Now, even in interagency consultative forum, you see that, the bias, that feeling of how can a civilian say what we do here. You have on-size there, you have the IGP, and all that. How can you now bring the INEC chairman, to begin to look into the details of security? That's the attitude, security personnel usually assume when dealing with bloody civilians. Let me tell you, one thing Dr. Konzwa said, and I agree with him, is that there are several issues that bedevil our polity, but those issues come to play during elections. They come to play during elections. For instance, he asked a question, why are people not arresting people who are breaching the law? You measure it with what doctor is saying. Institutional bias. All right? That is one of the reasons. But, talking about that security, we cannot, because we are running a dysfunctional system. If we create security for INEC, are we going to create a department of transport too? Logistics, yeah? Because INEC depend on other organizations to function. Are we also going to create a department of justice to prosecute? Like that law, we are in the process of amending it now. There's no way. INEC cannot, there's no way, but INEC cannot do all that. INEC cannot provide its own security. INEC cannot have its own transport, a fleet of vehicles. It must depend on other people. So it is our duty. We must ensure that we expect INEC to do so much. Unfortunately, INEC cannot. And so that question of having a squad, to provide for security, no. But our security, because where are you going to get them from? Won't you get them from the Nigerian police? Or where? You still get them from DSS. Okay? But there's somebody who is overall. So we must have systems that work. Perhaps that is where our salvation lies. Our systems must be functioning. What about the security of individual staff? Do you know the troubles that INEC goes through? I'm talking about it because I observe. To conduct these elections at gunpoints, abductions. Let me tell you, on a good day, they will tell their story. I saw the trauma they went through to conduct elections in Imo State. Agencies of people were coming and giving orders. This one is from Abuja. This one, and everybody was armed.
So how can we strengthen INEC?
The only people who were not armed is INEC. Everybody, you understand? So to strengthen INEC, we must participate. Everybody must come out. Imagine if everybody in a PU, where 100 people are registered, everybody stays there to vote and watch votes. Where will violence come from? It's because people just vote and go and say, INEC, let INEC do their job. No, INEC needs help. When you talk about INEC, are they not our husbands? Are they not our brothers? They're not. It didn't bring them from the air. And they are so vulnerable.
Exactly.
They're so vulnerable.
Exactly. And I want to bring in Dr. Kabiru Adamu here because he's been itching to say something, because Esther has punctured, your
I think she misunderstood me. I didn't say INEC should have a squad. That wasn't my word. I said INEC should enhance the capacity, the effectiveness and efficiency of its security department. That does not translate to INEC having a squad.
But how can INEC do that, when, of course, in the election situation...
I will explain it. INEC is using a tool that in security risk management is the best, frankly. I say this with due respect and responsibility to Professor Mahmoud Jega that deployed that model. He got it from an European country and they were nice enough to give it to INEC. That tool is the latest model in security risk management. I challenge every listener with due sense of responsibility. How many of our public security departments actually have seen that model and know how that model operates? Why am I saying this? If the electoral umpire has a model that is the latest in election security risk management, and then you are bringing in a director from the DSS, perhaps, or from the police that does not even understand the model, how do you expect them to implement the model? So my point is that INEC should look at its department that handles security and see how it can enhance the capacity of that department. I actually went out to give a recommendation that you should look outside of the public departments to get experts, because frankly there are experts now in industrial security in Nigeria that are very good, recognized world over, that can assist in that regard. I've been to functions outside Nigeria, in fact in the US, where some private security practitioners have given lectures on that particular election, ESRM model, election security risk management. So I'm not advocating that INEC should have its part. All I'm saying is enhance that department so that the department is able to look at the IG when he brings the list of deployment. I'm sorry to say this is about money.
So that tool helps to ascertain the level of deployment of manpower and resources.
So in one word, the tool reduces, firstly analyzes the risk so that you appreciate what the risk is, and then you are now able to use elements within the tool itself to reduce the risk. In risk management, you want to lower the risk so that you can do your work.
Okay, Kabiru, we've run out of time. From the security perspective, how can we quickly begin to de-escalate and degrade the level of violence in Edo now?
What INEC is doing, it should continue the engagement with stakeholders, identify the stakeholders. I'm not too happy with the fact that we're leaving out the youth groups. Most of this violence is being done by them. So when INEC goes out to engage, do not stop only at the political players, the traditional rulers, the security agencies. Engage. Kenya did something that I found really, really novel. Engage the youths and frankly give them some functions to do, especially the non-state actor groups among the youths. In Edo State, for instance, we know there are cult groups and they are quite armed and active. So find a role for them beyond the role that politicians will use them for. If you leave them out of it, politicians will use them negatively. So use them positively.
Is it easy to say that to use them?
It's very easy.
To use cult members who are armed for a positive outlaws for a positive.
Kirian, we can attempt to ignore them at the risk of the consequence on the election.
Who will pay them?
I'm not saying we should use them to provide security. That's not what I'm saying.
These are men that are paid for what they do.
That is the
and they are very active during elections. And election time is business time for them.
If you leave them out, then the politicians will use them.
Actually, one of the engagements we will have will be with youths and women groups. We appreciate that the youths are used as cannon fodder during elections. They are used to foment trouble, they are used to perpetrate trouble, and we intend to engage with the youth severally.
Okay, I will. Sorry, please. I will still. Kabiru, please, just in less than 60 seconds, because we have.
One thing.
Yes.
We must feminize. We must feminize election security.
Women, yeah.
Oh yes. Where are they? Where are the women? The mopos? Where are they? Because one thing about men, if you bring two rams here, they'll start locking horns without talking to each other. 2 horns, animals, that experiment. Just bring one. They'll start fighting each other without introduction. Let's feminize. We must consciously begin to feminize our security process. Because there's once you see a woman, first of all, you let down your guard. Is that not so? So we must consciously, everybody is doing it. Why are we not using it?
Okay, Kiran.
To feminize. As a matter of fact, I wish we had time.
We have female police. Let's deploy more.
More of the female police.
Yes, not those armed. Yes, we must deploy them. Intelligence gathering is a huge part of security.
Okay, and that is the role I wanted the youth to do. Intelligence gathering.
The outlaws.
Well, even they are outlaws. They know where the hotspots. They know where the guns are coming from. They know where the drugs are coming from. So engage them. Get intelligence from them.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a very healthy conversation, this morning on the election, and we're about to round off this particular edition of the program. Before we do that, let's return to Benin and get the final thoughts of our guest there, Dr. Osawaru Okonzo. I just wouldn't know whether we'll have another opportunity of discussing the election before the election proper, but it's been very good that we had you this morning. So, your closing thoughts.
Well, the concern that is being shown by all of us in the Edo election is welcome, but I do believe all our fears for violence will not materialize. There is going to be a kind of anticlimax on that day. Edo people are civilized, they know who is going to be their governor, and all they need is for all the other agencies, INEC, security forces, to do their work properly so that we'll have a fair and transparent process that will be acceptable to the voters of Edo State.
So Sawaro Okonzwa is a public affairs analyst, and he joined us from Abini Network Center. Thank you, Dr. Okonzwa. Nick.
Yes, I was going to say that actually the risk tool you talked about was introduced not by the EU but by the AU, an international idea. And wherever we want to conduct elections and there are fears of violence, what we do is that working with the security agencies, the deployment of men is a reflection of how the security environment. If a place is prone to violence, we deploy more people.
In journalism, we say that we are all men, you know. So if a lady is a mopole, deploying the lady in a duty post, I'm not sure there's anything wrong about that. That's my own.
All right, Nick Dazang is the Director of Voter Education and Publicity of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
And my sister Esther Uzoma, who is of course an election observer and co-convener Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire.
Dr. Kabiru Adamu is a security risk management expert. He also joined us here in Abuja. Thank you very much, Kabiru. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you.
And he brought in a different dimension to the conversation, you know, with all the tools that he came up with, you know, to see how the election can be, you know, handled free and fair. And it's on this note that we conclude today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Come again tomorrow. We will return with a fresh edition of the program. My name is Kirian Umayo. Stay safe.
I am Claire Delabo Abdul Razak. Do have a great week ahead, and remember to wear a mask, observe physical distancing and personal hygiene. Bye-bye.